welcome back here to Viewpoints. I'm your host today, Jordan Voiles, and I'm sitting here with Dr. John Gerlach. Today, we're going to be talking about truth. So, John, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, I think as we've been talking about in this series, we're looking at some questions that the world has, culture has,
Mhm.
maybe somebody outside the Christian world who is not a believer and not a Christian,
Mhm.
whatever, wherever they're at spiritually, some of the different questions. So I think this is a key question, and that is, how come you guys think Christianity is the right answer? It's got the truth, and everybody doesn't have the truth.
Mhm.
How does that work? And I think it really hits real hard against a very common idea in our culture today, which is, well, you've got your truth, I've got my truth. And the thing about that is, and I think we gotta get into, it's interesting that when Pilate is talking to Jesus right before he's crucified, he asked Jesus, "What is truth?"
Mhm.
And Jesus had called himself, "I am the way, the truth, the life." So we find truth. Jesus claimed to be truth. That was a claim of Jesus. And so when we think about it, I think we have to, I think it's a great question to wrestle with. I think it's a legitimate question, actually, to say, okay, what does that mean? Well, I think what we got to talk about is the difference between relative truth and absolute truth.
Mhm.
And again, culture pushes against nobody should have absolute truth. And what they're asking for is relative truth, where you have yours, I have mine. Somebody else has a whole different truth
Right.
than either one. So, how have you seen this play out with people, especially spiritually?
Mhm.
Have you seen that? Okay, they go with that idea for whatever reason. Sometimes I think they go with that idea to explain a certain path of their life or a decision they're making or whatever. They
Mhm.
tend to gravitate toward that. But have you seen this affect somebody spiritually?
Well, I think we can see it a lot, especially in the world we're living in today. There was this picture that I saw of two um, two men standing on each side of a 9 and a 6. And he was like, "Well, that's a 9." And the other guy's like, "No, that's a 6." And so I think that we use that picture of what we think our own truth is, and especially in spiritual walk. We see it in politics now too, of people saying, "Well, this is my truth. This is how I believe. Who are you to tell me what is truth?"
Mhm.
Um, and so I think it's a tough situation to get ourselves in when we're talking about truth. Um, but I like to talk about it in a way of going, is there objective truth or is there subjective truth? Which is exactly what you're asking. But I think it can be really dangerous when we start reading the Bible or, living life in a way of going, well, this is my truth. Because ultimately, I do believe that there is truth. And we see it right there with Pilate. He's
Mhm.
even asking the question, and it's right in front of him.
Right.
And so, yeah, I would say, to answer your question, it's very dangerous when we live our life in a subjective truth.
Yeah. So let's just chase a couple statements that I think we hear in our culture today that are pretty prevalent, I think. And
Mhm.
for example, one big viewpoint I run into a lot are people who say, okay, yeah, you can have your faith, you can have your belief, that's fine. That should stay private. Don't go public with that.
Right.
That's just for you. If it helps you, great, because that's kind of your own truth.
Hmm.
But then the thing is, but we need to agree that all roads lead to God.
Right.
Okay, so that's the one. All roads lead to God.
Hmm.
And so I think we have to think through these statements. It's real easy to hear these things in our culture and we don't really think them through. But to me, that's one that in no other area of life or the universe
Right.
is that idea correct.
Hmm.
It's the, hey, Jordan, you're going to go to Lubbock, and you go, yeah, I'm going to go to Lubbock, and I say, well, hey, take any road and you'll get there.
Hmm.
I mean, we don't do that about anything else. I want to be a pilot. Hey, take any class, take any training you want, and you'll get to be a pilot.
Sure.
There's none of that that's there. But we feel like, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
That, I mean, our culture feels like that makes a lot of sense. And it really, on the face of it, you have to question it and go, wait a minute, whoa, does that even make sense, that
Hmm.
idea? And the answer, I think, is no.
Yes. Yeah. Giving someone bad advice ultimately will result in, why did you do that? Why did you tell me that? And there have been times where I've given and I have been given bad advice that wasn't truth, that I took, and ultimately it ended up in a place that I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we're going to end up, with a lot of cases in the church and in just the world in general. Is people are probably going to go like, "Why did you not tell me the truth?"
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. And I think, okay, so I don't know if you've heard this illustration before. I don't know. I think it's been around for a long, long time. But this illustration about if there was a group of blind men that encountered an elephant. Have you ever heard this before? And
No.
so they basically are trying to figure out, hey, let's figure out what an elephant's like. And so one guy's with the trunk, one's with tail, one's with the side, one's with the leg, all this kind of stuff. And they go, well, and they describe an elephant according to their perception. Well, one person's with the leg and go, it's kind of like a pillar. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then one person's touching the side of the elephant and go, no, it's like a wall. An elephant's like a wall. And what that picture is used by people with relative truth to say, well, see, they're all right, but they're all wrong.
Right.
So nobody sees the whole picture. So therefore, how can you say you have absolute truth? And again, it's a kind of a picture to say, oh, that explains why Christianity cannot have absolute truth. But here's the problem with that. The idea of for that person, and let's just say it's a conversation with someone who's saying, I don't think Christians have absolute truth. They use that story, for example. And then they go, well, see, you can't have absolute truth. But for them to say that, they themselves, the only way they're right and wrong is if you see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what they're saying is, what I'm saying you can't have, I have, which is the whole big picture. And I have the whole big picture of what the reality is. You don't. You're the blind guy touching the elephant down there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one who's sitting up looking at all this going, oh, so that's absolute truth.
Yeah.
I have the absolute truth, but does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that it would help, because I actually just read a quote today by R.C. Sproul that says that, doctrine and history, or the Bible and history, go hand in hand. So would you say that is a helpful tool, like not only, because people have experiences with God, but would you say it's important to know the history, or maybe if we could give some tools to the listener today of going like how to understand what truth is, well, you need these two ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that history and like, what are some ways to look at the full picture, I guess, is my question to you.
Yeah, I think a couple ways to look at the full picture is to ask ourselves, okay, wait a minute, and kind of look at it from their perspective, and to realize, when someone says, hey, look, you need to be, you can't be exclusive, you need to be inclusive of all ideas and all beliefs and that sort of thing. We have to look at those kind of things and question it and go, wait a minute, whoa. That's an exclusive belief,
Yeah, it is.
So what we tend to get, and I think that's the one thing to think about, is I think history is a great thing to think about. Did that really play out that way?
Yeah.
And then to think about lots of times what's being asked of us from our culture. Well, you can't do that, but our culture does that to go against Christianity, having absolute truth.
Yeah.
To me, everybody has exclusive beliefs. Everybody has absolute truth in their life, no matter what. It may be, I don't believe in God. That's an absolute truth. There is no God. Absolute truth. And for them, they're saying that's absolute truth. I don't think it's truth, but it is absolute
To them.
I mean, there's a lot of absolute statements. That's a better way to say it, probably.
Yeah.
Everybody's got absolute statements for their life. This is important. This is not important. All that kind of stuff. So it's kind of to get down to what are they building? What's the absolute statement for their lives? So, and I think it's very interesting because in history, interesting you brought that up, because in history, it's very clear in history, you have Christians who come into this Greek and Roman world who have all kind of gods. I mean, it's like, pick a god. You can, I mean, they've got 50, 100 gods that you could have for your personal,
Right.
Curated God. I like that one God over there. I'm going to go to he'd have his own, he or she would have their own temple. Very diverse. Okay. Very inclusive. Hey, and here comes Christianity with a very exclusive statement of Jesus is Lord. Okay. But what's amazing about that is the Romans and the Greeks never included other races. They never, in other words, you had to be Roman, or you didn't include women in some cases. And here comes Christianity with this very exclusive, Jesus is the Lord, but then they include everybody.
Yeah.
There's every race, men and women, Gentile, Jew, everybody is included. Why? Because Jesus showed us how that, and the example we get about how to deal with the world in this situation is from Jesus, where he reached out, has grace for those who kill him.
Yeah.
For those. So it's kind of, I think that's another place we get our guidance is what Jesus showed us. How do we deal with people who disagree with us? Well, people not only disagree with Jesus, they killed him, and yet he still had grace toward them, but still held on to truth.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the guardrails.
Absolutely. What would be one of the things that you'd want to leave the listener with today, talking about, this, how culture maybe views truths, or maybe doesn't view?
I think what I've just encouraged the listener is I truly believe that we do know truth, and that answer of truth is found in Jesus Christ. And to me, it is always going to be a frustrating life when we go, there is no truth, because that means, I don't even know what that means. It means everything can change every day.
Yeah.
And so I think everyone's looking for it. They may not totally realize it. They may not totally know what to call it, but I truly believe everybody is. And I would just encourage the listener, seek truth, find truth. And then I think take the opportunity to just say, Jesus Christ said he was. Let me check it out. Let me figure out if that's true or not.
Yeah. Try Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much. So, listener, we pray this has helped you. We pray that you would seek truth, even though it might be standing right in front of you. God bless.